Marhaba, my name is Megan and welcome to Wanderlust Voyages. Normally we are here to tell you all about Morocco, but today we're going to continue with our American recipe series. Today's recipe is going to be jalapeno cheddar bread. It is a very easy, no-knead bread that is a great introduction to those who are maybe just getting used to making bread. A lot of people get very intimidated by working with yeast breads because of all the kneading and the rising, but this recipe is practically foolproof. It's also very versatile. While the recipe as written includes cheddar cheese and jalapeños, you can make substitutions for whatever you would like, any kind of cheese. Maybe you want to do Swiss cheese and chopped olives, or maybe leave the cheese out entirely and add something like chunks of mortadella. Whatever you would like is going to be delicious in this chewy, springy, perfectly cooked loaf. So let's get started on how to make it. Today we're going to make jalapeno cheddar bread. This is a very easy bread because it doesn't require any kneading. Our ingredients are fairly simple. We have 3.5 cups of flour. We have 3 jalapeños. 2 of them are going to be diced small, 1 left in rings. Now, I cheat and use pickled jalapeños because they're a little bit less spicy, but you can use whatever peppers suit your taste. We also need 2.5 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, a tablespoon of salt, 2¼ teaspoons or 1 packet of yeast, and then 2 cups of warm water. For special equipment, you're also going to need a Dutch oven with a lid. This is going to allow it to cook with a wonderful brown crust and a chewy inside. Since we don't need that yet, we're going to set that aside. And we will begin by adding 2¼ teaspoons of yeast into a small bowl. To do that, we're going to add 2 cups of warm water. Again, you want to make sure that it is just lukewarm and not hot. Otherwise, you're going to kill your yeast. So, give this a quick stir, and then we're going to set that aside for a little bit for the yeast to prove. You want it to get nice and foamy. In the meantime, I'm going to chop the 2 jalapeños. Now, how finely you chop them is again up to you, but you don't want to leave them in whole rings. If you are using pickled jalapeños, you do want to dry them with a towel or paper towel because you don't want to add that much moisture into the bread. Okay, that is a nice rough chop. Now with our 3.5 cups of flour, we will add a scant 1 tablespoon of salt, just not quite full. If you are using fresh jalapeños, you might want to use a full tablespoon, but my pickled jalapeños have some salt as well, so I don't want to overwhelm the bread. Stir that together, and then stir in 2 cups of cheddar cheese that has been shredded. It is better to use cheese that you have shredded yourself instead of purchasing it pre-shredded, because when you purchase it pre-shredded, it does come with a coating to keep it from sticking together, and we really don't want that in our bread. Stir it together just to get the cheese coated in the flour. And now we're going to add our chopped jalapeños. And again, don't forget to reserve 1 jalapeno sliced in rings. You'll want about either 12 or 16 rings, and that's going to be used to decorate the top. Again, stir it to get everything coated. By coating the wet or sticky ingredients in flour, it's going to help keep them more evenly distributed in the bread, whereas if you add them when it's liquid, they can clump together. So we need to give our yeast just a couple more minutes to finish proofing, and then we will add it. Okay, you see here how the yeast has started to bubble up, and I wish I had the camera going earlier. You would see the bubbles coming up as the yeast was activating. So now it is good to go. You're going to pour it into your flour mixture. And you just want to carefully fold this together. It's going to be a very wet dough, and that is absolutely fine. As it sits, the flour will absorb more of the moisture. And even though, it was looking a little bit dry, keep stirring it before you add any more water. If you've ever made bread dough before, you know how easily it can go from looking too dry to suddenly being too wet as you get everything worked in there. If you have a rubber spatula, that is going to be best for stirring this instead of something like a wooden spoon, because again, you want to scrape down all of the sides. But of course, if you don't have one, whatever it is you have on hand, including your hands themselves. Okay, that looks like we have it well combined, and like I said, this is not a dough that you need to knead. So don't worry about having to mix it a lot. So now what we need to do is give this about an hour in a warm place to rise. We're going to cover it with plastic wrap and then a towel, and then let it double in size. So we will see you back in about an hour. Okay, it's been an hour and our bread dough has risen beautifully. Now, when you're normally making bread, this is the point when you're going to punch it down and let it rest for another hour and a half. In this case, because we are not kneading it, we're just going to fold it over. So again, using a spatula, scoop down to the bottom and bring it to the top. Turn the bowl slightly and do it again. You want to do this for a total of 8 times. That also helps bring it into more of a ball shape. We're going to cover this once more and let it rest for 30 minutes this time. Another thing that you will have to do while this is resting for 30 minutes, turn on your oven to 450 degrees and place that Dutch oven with its lid in the oven to preheat. Again, that's going to give our bread a wonderful, crusty, dark edge. So, leave this for 30 minutes and we'll be back. All right, it's been 30 minutes. You can see our dough has risen up yet again. And this time we will turn it out onto a lightly floured surface. Give it another sprinkling of flour. Then you're going to want to turn it over and begin to fold in the dough. Go in quarters and then again with the other corners, folding each end into the middle. As you can see, it's still a pretty sticky dough. That is absolutely fine. And then when you have it all folded in, turn it over, make sure you have a nice, neat ball, and brush off any additional flour. Then you're going to want put it on a piece of baking paper. And what you want to do is have a couple teaspoons of vegetable oil or olive oil to brush over the top of it. This is going to help the toppings adhere better to the dough. We're going to then sprinkle on the additional cheese. Don't worry if it falls off. This is all going to go together into the preheated Dutch oven, which will help hold it together. Then we just want to cut maybe about 1/4 inch into the dough, cutting it into quadrants, 4 pieces. And then you're going to grab your remaining rings of jalapeños and stick those on as well. All right, now we're going to put this into our preheated Dutch oven. So let me grab that out of the oven. So use the paper to lift it up, put it right in the center. Make sure you don't lose your jalapeños, and then cover it. We're going to bake this with the lid for 30 minutes, and then we will take the lid off and bake it for another 20. Okay, so it just finished its 20 minutes in the oven, and as you can see, it is a beautiful golden brown. Now, because you can't really check the bottom, tap the bottom to see if it sounds hollow like regular bread, you can always use an instant read thermometer, and you want it to be 200 degrees. So once it's out, remove it from the pan, and you want to let this cool for at least 20 minutes before you cut into it. All right, our bread has had a chance to cool, but it's still nice and warm. So let's cut into it and see how it looks. You always want a serrated knife so you don't squish your bread. Oh, look at that, has the cheese swirled through. This is wonderful as is. Make sandwiches with it, toast it, or my favorite, top it with avocado and egg. So that is how you make cheddar jalapeno bread, an easy no-knead recipe, and bon appetit!